Call the meeting to order. Welcome all of you to the Radnor Township School District regular business meeting, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome the Wayne Elementary Girl Scout Troop 5343 in the audience. We'll hear from them a little later. And I'd like to report that the board met in executive session on April 30th, May 7th, May 14th, and again tonight, May 28th. We discussed matters of personnel and legal. And with that, we will get underway with our report from students. Welcome, girls.
Hi, we're so excited to be here tonight, and I hope everyone had an enjoyable Memorial Day weekend. A lot has happened in the month of May, including our AP exams and our Keystone testing for almost every grade level but the juniors and the seniors. And in sports, Radnor has had a lot of great achievements, and the boys tennis team will be recognized tonight. So junior Kira Seaschultz placed second in states for her track meet, beating her own previously set school record for the 800 by 2.59 seconds. Girls lacrosse was supposed to play Parkland today in the first round of states playoffs, making it a win or go home situation. However, the game was postponed till tomorrow, hence the reason why I'm here today presenting to you. If we win tomorrow, we will enter into the quarterfinals and most likely face Harriton on Saturday, June 1st. Additionally, boys lacrosse played Hempfield today, and we are eagerly awaiting the results of their game since yet again it is a win or go home situation. From girls lacrosse, we had 3 players who were awarded both U.S. Lacrosse All-Academic and U.S. Lacrosse All-American. Those individuals were Captain Kate Cox, who will be playing at Lehigh, Junior Captain Ellie Miller, who will be playing lacrosse at Princeton, and Junior Missy Massimino, who will compete on Georgetown's women's lacrosse team.
For the past few weeks, our schedule has been rearranged in order to accommodate the testing, but finally everything has returned to normal. School-wide elections have concluded, and I'm honored to tell you that Annabelle Zhao will be replacing Nick Camposano as our school's new executive director. Also, rising junior Andrew Rosen will be the new executive vice director. On May 13th, 26 academic awards were given to juniors at the high school. Additionally, seniors Nick Camposano and Joey Pevner were deemed 2019 National Merit Scholars. This month, 10 senior athletes signed their letters of intent to the colleges they will be attending as their families and friends watched and support. The sports included football, soccer, volleyball, crew, and track. Next year's LM Week will be a few weeks sooner than usual, and the theme was just recently announced. So the 2019 LM Week theme will be High School Musical. On Friday, May 23rd, the high school congregated in the gym to have our annual Memorial Day Assembly. There, Meredith Foreman sang the national anthem, and as a school, we acknowledged the brave men and women who have fought for our nation. Today we had another assembly where Mr. McBride earned an award and was recognized for his outstanding teaching. Mr. McBride is known as a wonderful teacher who always tries to push his students to succeed. Overall, the month of May has been very busy for high school students. As the school year is quickly coming to a close, students are beginning to prepare for finals and finishing up the last couple of units in our classes. With summer just on the way, we are trying to persevere through these last couple of tough days. And once again, thank you for having us.
Thank you, ladies. And now we'll have our report from our superintendent, Mr. Batchelor.
Good evening. It's good to see everyone. And in light of the fact that we have some recognitions coming up as well, and we have some other things on our agenda, I just want to quickly just mention a few items. The first item is that we have some exciting personnel news that we're going to discuss later in the agenda tonight. We're excited to welcome Dr. David Weidlich. David's going to be starting and be recommended tonight to be our next middle school principal. Mr. Dan Bechtold, our Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning. Dan is our current high school principal, as many of you are well aware. We are thrilled to have Dan in this new position, replacing Dr. Maureen McQuiggan. We're going to have an opportunity to recognize Dr. McQuiggan next month as we recognize many of our retirees here in the district. And then we are thrilled to have Mrs. P.T. Kevgis, who will be our next Radnor High School principal. We'll have an opportunity, as I said on the agenda, to be talking about all these positions. And then also, Mr. Ryan Bruderball will be moving from our middle school as assistant principal to become the assistant principal at our high school. One of the neat things about Ryan is when he started, the seniors were his first class when he was at the middle school. The current juniors who will be seniors. So it'll be neat for Ryan to be at the high school, and he'll see how they've grown and has known all of the different students. We are thrilled, though, with all these positions. For our middle school principal, we had over 60 applicants. Which is really tremendous. It's really incredible. I've been involved in many districts, or in at least 2 other districts for middle school searches, and we're always excited at 30 or 40 applicants. So in looking at an applicant pool of over 60 applicants, in a very rigorous process, we were really excited with the pool and the candidates, but we're especially thrilled about Dr. Weidlich. Dr. Weidlich comes to us with a great deal of experience, a great deal of knowledge in middle school education, and an incredible passion for students, a passion for connecting with our community and our staff, and we're just excited to have him get started. With Mr. Bechtold, we know he's done great things at the high school, and while it's hard to see him leave the helm of the high school, we are really thrilled that he's willing to come work in the district office and help oversee our secondary program. And then Mrs. Kevgis, and I know she's here as well this evening, we are thrilled to have in-house Mrs. Kevgis, who will assume the reins of our high school and the helm of the high school, and will continue the tradition of excellence that we've had at that high school, that will continue at our high school. And then, as I mentioned with Ryan, we're excited. So we'll put those early on the agenda. And so I'll quickly just want to list some of the end-of-year events. This is the mad dash to the end of the year. Yeah, there's not enough days for all these events, but we have a lot going on at the end of the year. And I know some of you are counting the hours and minutes and seconds as we look at the end of the year. Most importantly, though, too, when we look at the end-of-the-year events, I had an opportunity today. Our 8th graders came over and they looked at the high school, and they had a chance to get a quick tour of the high school. I had an opportunity to talk to all the 8th graders as they came over. This is an exciting time of the year. We have transitions all across the district beginning. Our 5th graders are getting ready to transition to middle school. Our 8th graders are getting ready to transition to high school. And then our senior class, the class of 2019, they're getting ready to transition with graduation. So we are especially excited for that senior class. And as their graduation is coming up in just a few weeks, we want to wish them all the best, and that we know we have plenty of opportunities still to recognize them as well. And that's all I have for this evening.
Okay, lots of good things. Let's get right underway. We have 3 recognitions tonight. The first is a recognition and award to our Ithan Elementary School teacher and a student. Our Ithan Elementary School, Mrs. Christinger. Mrs. Goldman, go ahead.
Would you like to come up, Mrs. Christinger? Yes, she would. Come join me. This is Mrs. Christinger, everybody. Yeah. And we are honoring Mrs. Christinger, who is the Ithan Elementary School first grade teacher, who was recently named a recipient of the Delaware County Excellence in Teaching Award, sponsored by the Franklin Mint Federal Credit Union and the Delaware County Intermediate Unit. The award was given to 18 teachers in various school districts and private schools who demonstrate dedication, innovation, and motivation in the classroom. Ms. Christinger received a commemorative plaque, a $500 cash grant, and $1,000 to benefit Ithan Elementary School at the annual Partners in Education celebration at the Drexelbrook Corporate Events Center on May 2nd. She was also featured with the other Excellence in Teaching Award recipients in the Delaware County Daily Times. Ms. Christinger joined Ithan Elementary School as a first grade teacher in 2001. She is the first grade team leader and serves on the Ithan Cares Committee, which works to build community through its core values of cooperation, assertiveness, responsibility, empathy, and self-control. The superintendent, along with the board, the Radnor community, and on behalf of her colleagues, congratulates Melissa, her family, and her friends, and Ithan Elementary School on her outstanding accomplishment.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we have a certificate for you.
Wonderful.
Right here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and I'm sure all the other board members would like to congratulate you as well.
I don't really need to say something. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much. Did you hear that? With this certificate, my children have to clean their rooms.
You have to clean the rooms as part of the certificate, so I just see the families there. So just sorry, guys, wanted to let you know, that's part of it.
I'm gonna work to use that. Absolutely.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I know.
Okay, and next we have a recognition for another Ithan Elementary School teacher and a Radnor High School junior for each having earned a Make a Difference Award, and we're going to have Mrs. Solomon do that recognition.
Yeah, you want to come on up. Alice Hood, master teacher at Ithan Elementary School. And I don't believe Elijah is here, so we will talk about him in his absence, but it's all good. So, Ithan Elementary School teacher and a Radnor High School junior each earned a Making a Difference Award. So they earned separate awards, but we're presenting them together. Radnor High School student Elijah Hall and Ithan Elementary School teacher Alice Hood have each earned an award in 2019, Making a Difference, sponsored by the Delaware County Right to Education Task Force. They were honored at a ceremony on April 29th at Northley Middle School in Aston. The award recognizes students who have demonstrated exceptional support, friendship, acceptance, and understanding to ensure the inclusion of classmates of all abilities, students who have persevered and overcome challenges to be successful, and adults who have demonstrated extraordinary efforts through their exceptional work to promote acceptance and understanding to ensure the inclusion of all children of all abilities. So the superintendent, along with the board and the Radnor community, congratulate Elijah and Ms. Hood on their outstanding accomplishments.
Thank you.
Alice Hood. And I want to invite you, but not force you to say anything if you would like, or just go receive congratulations from the board. It's your choice.
Well, I don't need to say anything, but you know me. Those of you who do know me know I like to talk. No, I just want to say thank you also, and what a treat it is to be awarded, but also to be awarded along with my colleague, Melissa Christinger. I feel very fortunate to teach at a school with such wonderful people. So, thank you.
I know. Maybe they'll come home.
Alice, congratulations.
Got here just in time.
And next, we have a recognition for the Radnor High School boys tennis team in their undefeated Central League champion season. Mr. Kurtz, actually, if you would come up and help hand out the awards. I'm going to give the names a go here. So, boys, as you hear your name, if you could come up, and Mr. Kurz, and actually Mrs. Schenk, if you want to come up as well. And then hold your applause till the end, and we'll do that all at once. The Radnor High School boys tennis team completed an undefeated season on its way to the Central League title this season. The team's last Central League title was in 2016. The team also finished fourth in the PIAA District 1 Class AAA playoffs with wins over Pennsbury and Upper Dublin and a hard-fought loss to Great Valley in the district quarterfinals. This performance qualified the team for the PIAA Class III team tournament, where the team finished second with wins over Hershey, Cathedral Prep, and Unionville before losing to Great Valley in the state championship. We take extra pleasure in your win over Unionville for reasons known to one particular person. Max, correct. Max Jr. Safanov also earned the team a Central League singles title with a win over Lower Merion's Vic Miller on April 13th. The member of the boys tennis team are Luigi Giacomucci, Udai Kaneda, Matt Khalil. Come on up, guys, that's great. Ryan Klein, Ethan Lee, Colton Markowitz, Ryan Movsowitz, Chris Reinhardt, Max Safanov, Alex Samaha, Garrett Spillerman, Alex Weiss, and Max Shea. The team is coached by Mr. Patrick Kurz and Ms. Wendy Schenk. The superintendent, along with the board and the Radnor community, congratulate these students, their parents, and their coaches on this outstanding accomplishment. Great. Boys, if you want to just kind of do a little circle, the board would like to congratulate you, and then head outside with your coaches because Mr. Petiti will take a picture. And congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations, Alice. Congratulations. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Whoa, what's that?
That is the trophy. There you go. Congratulations. 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 Luigi, you do it all. Congratulations. The concert was great, by the way. Congratulations. Thank you so much. What a great season. Thank you so much. Okay, so we'll give them a moment to head out the door here. That's right.
Oh, no, you were going to do.
No? After public comment. Yep, you have to have public comment before a vote. Okay, and so now we've reached the public comment section of our meeting. Citizens are encouraged to address the board during the public comment portions of the meeting on the agenda or other topics related to the Radnor Township School District. Please print your name on the sign-in sheet at the table in the back of the room. Clearly state your name and your address and your topic to be addressed. We ask individual comments to be limited to not more than 4 minutes as per Board Policy 006. Should you be unable to attend the meeting this evening, please submit your comments by email to boardcomments@rtsd.org or in writing to Mr. Michael Petiti, Radnor Township School District, 135 South Wayne Avenue, Wayne, PA. Girls, if you're going to come up, if you haven't written your name down already, that's okay. You can do it afterwards. Okay, super. Welcome. Now you might need to kind of move the microphone toward, you can go right to the podium, right there. We don't bite. That's right.
Hi, I'm Lila, and I'm from Troop 5343.
I'm Vivian.
I'm Callie, but I'm standing in for my friend Maeve. We are here to tell you why we should have seatbelts on the bus. As you know, seatbelts are a common safety device found in all vehicles except buses. Why?
If seatbelts aren't on buses, it can cause problems like slamming into seats, which can cause injuries. It can cause bad safety habits in kindergartners, like not buckling in cars.
It is a serious issue, and we care a lot about it. And what about emergencies? How would the bus driver know who's buckled and who's stuck?
This is an excerpt from the New York Times. The horrifying image of the mangled Yale school bus after it collided with a dump truck on a New Jersey highway on Thursday has focused attention on bus safety. The bus was carrying 45 students and adults on a field trip when it crashed, leaving one student and one teacher dead and many others injured. The police said the children had been wearing seatbelts. These seatbelts saved 43 lives.
If there was a system of a button that only the bus driver can use to unhook all those seatbelts in case of an emergency, that could help all 45 children and teachers. We came up with a system of we call it the button system. It's when the bus driver can use a button in case of emergency to unhook all the seatbelts and make sure every student gets off safely. Only 8 states are allowed seatbelts on buses. We're hoping to push it to 9. Thank you.
Thank you very much, girls, for coming up.
I'll do the introduction and
We'll
say.
put this thing down.
I'll do. Yeah. Hello, my name is Julia Kaiserman. My name's Callie Honesty, and I hope you had a good Memorial Day. We're here to speak about the Crossroads lottery and how it's unfair. And we're gonna start with some questions. Our first question is: do you use a computer to control the lottery?
So, you know what, girls, you don't normally come to our meeting. We're going to write down all the questions, and then they're going to be on our website later in the month or early June. And you'll be able to see all the answers because we want to hear your questions and then allow our administrators to look up all the proper information, and we'll put it on our website, okay? All righty.
Our next question is: what's the company that you chose for the computer, and why did you choose it? Our third company, our third question is: do you mix the schools when you write them down in the computer?
Yes. I'll speak for this one. Because if you did mix in the schools together when randomizing it, wouldn't it be possible that all the students for Crossroads could all come from one school, and that wouldn't be fair to the other schools?
And how do you make the waiting list? What happens if you got the year before? Does your chance increase or decrease, or does it stay the same? And and now what we think you should do is how this is a successful program. You could get 2 more teachers and another class with 40 more students.
We think it isn't fair that only 40 out of around 300 kids are chosen for Crossroads, and when around 150 kids really want to get in, but 110 of them would then be turned down. A simple solution to this issue would be, as Julia said, to add another classroom for Crossroads with 2 more teachers and 40 kids. That way, only 70 kids would get turned down instead of 110.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Weidlich, it sounds like you might have some homework. Good for you. Welcome, girls.
Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Kubala.
And I'm Reagan Whitehead.
We're from Troop 5343 of Wayne Elementary in 5th grade. We think that there should be more student involvement besides writing their name in the lottery. We think that there should be a student signature to prove that the parents did not sign them up without their knowledge or consent. They should also fill out a form that has questions like, why do you want to be in Crossroads? Or why do you think this is a good fit for you? And it should be filled out at school so that parents play no part in it and can't tell their child that they have to do it. Also, it would be nice if there was some teacher input and not just computer. Also, we believe that for the first time you apply to an integrated program, your name will be put in 3 times. If you got in, the next time you apply for an integrated program, the times your name is decreases by 1. It only counts if you're fully in Crossroads, not on the wait list, or if you say no. Thank you for taking ideas into consideration.
Goodbye.
Well, thank you all. Do we have any other public comment? Mr. Petiti, do we have any email comments tonight?
Nope.
Okay, great.
And if I could just jump in, too, I just want to thank the girls for coming. And as Mrs. Stern, the president, said, we're approving tonight our next principal of our middle school, Dr. Weidlich. So he's sitting in the audience. So your timing was great. On top of that, I also want to encourage the girls. I think everyone's 5th grade. Okay, everyone's 5th grade. So you have an opportunity. That's great to meet your new principal. And this is something that we administratively will look at these questions and we'll post the answers to these questions. But also, if you have additional questions, you can reach out through your principal at your building. Reach out to your principal, and either myself or Dr. Rabarczyk could come and talk to you as well and explain, at least give you answers. You might not be happy with some of the answers, but at least one of us could sit with you and talk to you and let you know some of the history and reasons behind it. But thank you for coming tonight.
Okay, and with that, we are going to move right into our committee reports. We have a curriculum committee report. Mrs. Solomon? I do.
Good evening. The Curriculum Committee met on May 14th. On your agenda tonight are several items for approval that came through committee. The award of the Crescent Scholarship for boys and girls and the award of the Dreher Scholarship. A number of clubs, the Hispanic Student Association, a Note in a Tote, Study Space, and Women in STEM. The overnight student trips for the PA Music Educators Association Festival and for the Watershed class trip. And finally, contracts for the Schoology Learning Management System license renewal and for Rothman Orthopedics athletic trainers. And then we had a presentation of the PAYS data, which is a student-wide survey. It's conducted by the Caron Foundation on the Radnor students from data from 2017. It was presented by Dana Ratko of the Drug and Alcohol Prevention Program of the Delaware County Office of Behavioral Health, and Christine Storm, who is the Regional Director of Education for the Caron Treatment Center. And then we had a lengthy presentation, a review of our wellness study findings by our wellness study team, and I want to acknowledge the people who served on them. So Dr. Jim Kearney, Dr. Dan Kane, Dr. Denny McKnight, Dr. Doug Kent, and Carolyn Riley of the DCIU were critical leadership on that committee. And that presentation, I think, is going to be of interest to a lot of people. We found some very relevant findings to keeping our students safe in every way. So again, thank you to the committee for their hard work on that and for bringing us the news, and also for putting forth recommendations that can address some of the things we saw. So our next meeting will be on June 18th. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have our Facilities Committee meeting. Mr. Miller?
Hi, thank you. So, Facilities Committee met as a committee of the whole, with the whole board, and we talked about the bucket truck replacement and the capital plan, but the main event was a 3-hour tour of the Bleacher Committee recap of the whole presentation on the whole report that we put together, and we're going to move forward with that at the next Facilities Committee meeting, which is probably a week or two, I forget when. So if you're interested in the whole athletic complex rebuild at the high school, take 3 hours and watch the YouTube.
Thank you. For the Finance Committee meeting, we met on May 7th. Our Finance Committee meeting was a meeting of the full board. It was a special board meeting. Within that, as a Finance Committee, we approved a number of items that are on the agenda for approval tonight, items for disposal. We have a number of contracts for approval tonight that are listed. Our solicitor, Whistler Pearlstein, our substitute teachers, our food consulting services, and our auditor. We also, on our agenda later tonight, will have a roll call vote on our Delaware County Community College annual budget. We will also be approving our Delaware County Community College Board of Trustees and approval of the Delaware County Intermediate Unit Board of Directors. We have a number of awards, bids that were awarded. We have our approval of our district treasurer, just a number of financial items that are all on the agenda for tonight. And our next meeting will be Tuesday, June 4th. Our Policy Committee meeting, Mrs. Goldman.
The Policy Committee met on Tuesday, May 14th. The items covered include 2 policies that are on tonight's agenda for a second read and adoption. Those policies are Policy 904, Public Attendance at School Events, and Policy 225, Relations with Law Enforcement Agencies. Both of these policies have remained exactly the same as they were when they came before the board at the April business meeting for a first read, and are now before the board tonight for a second read and adoption. Also on the agenda tonight is Policy 239, Foreign Exchange Students. This policy might sound familiar to you because it has come before the Policy Committee every month since it was introduced there in February. It also came before the full board in March and is here again tonight for another first read. It's my understanding that this policy is going to be pulled from the consent agenda for some additional discussion, so I will wait until that occurs to provide any more details on the history of the policy at that time if it's needed. The Policy Committee will next meet on Tuesday, June 11th at 5 o'clock.
Next, we'll hear a report from the Government Relations Communications Committee. Mrs. Goldman?
Government Relations Communications met on Tuesday, May 7th, and covered the following items. Administrative Liaison Michael Petiti gave a recap of the 6th Annual GRCC Legislative Breakfast that the district hosted on April 5th. Second, Government Relations and Communications Committee members Andrew Babson, Chuck Madden, and I gave a recap of PSBA's Annual Advocacy Day that was held at the State Capitol on Monday, April 29th, and Board President Susan Stern also attended. Also on your agenda tonight, you will see 2 resolutions that we are asking the board to approve that have to do with cyber charter funding reform. By doing so, we will be joining nearly all of our fellow Delaware County school districts and many others across the state. Currently, Pennsylvania school districts spend nearly $500,000 annually on cyber charter tuitions. The first resolution supports statewide cyber charter funding reform. This resolution expresses our opposition to current state law that requires us to pay cyber charter tuitions for regular and special education students who reside within our district boundaries and may not even be current district students that are actually the costs of educating a student in a brick and mortar school and have no relationship to the actual cost of a cyber education. In Radnor this past school year, we have paid over $215,000 in cyber tuitions that cost $16,000 for a regular education student and over $39,000 for a special education student. The resolution before you tonight calls on our elected officials to support legislation that corrects these tuitions for regular and special education students that we pay to cyber charter schools so that those tuitions are based on the actual cost of educating a student in a cyber setting and relieves this financial burden on our district and taxpayers. The second resolution on the agenda calls for us to support 2 companion pieces of legislation, House Bill 526 and Senate Bill 34, that would allow school districts who offer full-time cyber education programs to not have to pay cyber charter tuitions for students who choose to be educated outside of the district's own online learning program if a district offers one. So Chuck and I hope that you will show your support for these cyber charter funding reform resolutions and are happy to answer any additional questions you might have about them. Our committee will not be meeting in June.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move into our priority discussion and action items, but as I indicated earlier, I'm going to be pulling right now item 14.1 from our consent agenda. That's our personnel action item. I indicated to the board and the public earlier I'd be pulling it to move it earlier into the evening. Mr. Batchelor, I thought you might like the pleasure of giving the background on this item, and then I can ask for a motion and a second.
Yes, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we have several items on our personnel agenda, but most specifically, we have tonight the approval of our next middle school principal. Would you like me to do them all at once, or just one? Our next middle school principal, so I'm excited that we have on the agenda, as I mentioned, Dr. David Weidlich. David is coming to us from Downingtown Area School District. We are happy to be able to steal him. We are excited about what he's going to bring to our district, and we are looking forward to get you started right away. And we have those girls over there that I think will meet with you before you leave, David. Don't
go fast.
Don't go fast. And as I said, do you want me to go through them all right now?
Yeah,
we also have on the agenda, Mr. Dan Bechtold was unable to be with us tonight. Mr. Bechtold's mother is retiring, an educator, an elementary school teacher in another district who's retiring, so Mr. Bechtold is there tonight, but he wanted to be here with us. He will be on the agenda for approval for our Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning. Mr. Bechtold has done an outstanding job as our current high school principal, providing us with leadership both on individual items in curricular areas, instructionally, and also with individual projects as well. Mr. Bechtold will be moving to the director position, and he'll be supervising both our middle school and high school programs in his new role. And then next on the agenda, we have Mrs. Kevgis. So Mrs. Kevgis is our extremely talented and skillful assistant principal currently at our high school, and that we are excited for her to continue the tradition of excellence and leadership at our high school as she takes over as the principal of the high school. We are thrilled that she brings not only those skills and talents, but also her knowledge of having been a teacher at Radnor High School and then assistant principal for many years, and that her leadership now at our high school we're very excited, so thank you. And then also we have Mr. Ryan Buterball on the agenda to be approved as our assistant principal, replacing Mrs. Kevga's position. So Mr. Buterball will be leaving our middle school and will be at our high school as assistant principal there. We thank Mr. Buterball for all. He unfortunately couldn't be with us here tonight, but he is as equally excited to join our high school team. And as I mentioned in the beginning earlier, the connection with the kids and his past experience as a longtime high school teacher, this was an opportunity he was looking for to reconnect with high school kids since he started off as a high school teacher. So I'm thrilled to mention that all these items are on for board approval this evening.
And so with that, I will entertain a motion for 14.1, the personnel action item.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Before we take the vote, I just wanted to also note it. We're going to make a big recognition next month, but of all of our retiring employees. But we have two teachers who are near and dear to me, Mrs. Canavan and Mrs. Skuchis, were an integral part of my youngest son's upbringing at Ithan. So I'm wishing them well in their retirement. I look forward to honoring them next year. And unless there's any other comments, with that, I will take the vote for this item. All those in favor? Opposed? And the item passes unanimously 8-0. Congratulations.
And well, now Dave's going to have to get used to working with me. So would you like to say a few words? We didn't plan this, but you can come up and say a few words. And it's nice to have your wife here with us as well. So welcome.
I don't want to turn my back. I'm thrilled.
Mike, though. Yeah.
You can't. Usually I'm not enough. But
No, Dave, use this.
so naturally, I'm thrilled and to be joining your school community. But also at the same time, I'm very humbled. I look forward to working with all of you. I look forward to working with the RMS staff, fellow administrators, to continue to do what's best for kids. I'm hopeful to start as soon as possible, hit the ground running, and start 1920 on a very positive note. So thank you very much to all of you, and I'm excited to begin.
Thank you, Dave. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Mrs. Kevgis, PT, come on. I'm going to do it to you. And actually, I see we've got the whole Kevgis clan there, so welcome. It's good to see you guys as well there. And I should say ahead of time to the spouses, thank you. I know that these positions involve a lot of time and a lot of dedication, and thank you for your flexibility for all the time that I know already Mrs. Kepkes gives to our district and will continue to, so thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Here's my teacher voice. Thank you, Mr. Batchelor. Thank you, school board, for this amazing opportunity. I am truly humbled and honored. As you know, Radnor has always been my second home. I student taught here, and I never left. So I am truly blessed to be a part of this community, and I look forward to serving in my new role, both the students and the community at large. I'm going to take one quick minute, if I might, to say thank you to my family and my husband, who have been on this journey with me and have patience with me, and their love and support means the world. And, to my mom and my godmother in the back, who have helped me raise my children for the past 14 years. I could not have done it without you. It truly takes a village, so thank you. I'm really excited, and I hope I make you all Radnor proud.
Something you're not going to hear from me often, to the two of you. Leave. You can go home. Well, actually, you probably will hear me say, because I know how hard you work, but in all seriousness, you do not have to stay for the rest of this meeting. So congratulations. We're thrilled to have you both in the new positions, and thank you for being here tonight.
So thank you. Now we will get underway with item 8.1. Mrs. Solomon, do you want to introduce this item as a priority discussion action item?
Yes. This is the budget item for the Delaware County Community College general operating budget for 2019-2020. The recommendation is that the board approves the Delaware County Community College general operating budget for fiscal year 2019-2020 in the amount of $96,976,312. That's total, with Radnor Township School District's portion being approved in the amount of $1,458,276. This will be a roll call vote.
Yes. Do we need a motion for a roll call vote? We do, right? Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion for approval for that.
So moved.
And a second?
Second. Yeah, you do want to make sure that you have a motion and a second before you take the vote. You don't need a motion and a second simply to take a roll call vote, but anytime you call the vote, you need a motion and a second.
I don't know if anyone has questions, or we're just going to go forward with the roll call. We seem to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So I have a question. and
Okay, great.
It actually relates to information that we're not dealing with tonight, but this operating budget for next year is separate and apart from any costs there would be if they get to buy the Prendergast facility?
Right. This is what everybody was circulated.
Right.
An envelope like this
Right.
with the operating budget in it. I believe it came out 2 months ago.
Yeah, it was mailed to our homes, right?
Right. It's separate and apart from any bond that would be issued for the other possible transaction.
Right, but, implications on the operating budget, that will be something for us to discuss in conjunction with the resolution for the Prendy project. Okay? Alrighty, so, Mrs. Deco, are there any other questions or comments? Great. Do you want to run the vote?
Yes.
Roll call?
Ms. Stern.
Aye.
Ms. Solomon.
Yes?
Dr. Babson.
Aye.
Ms. Bonenberger.
Aye.
Ms. Dunn.
Aye.
Ms. Goldman.
Aye.
Mr. Madden.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Now for item 8.2. Lydia, do you want to introduce this? But we're going to make a motion to table.
Okay, so do you want me to read it? This is the request to approve the Delaware County Community College Prendergast Building Project. The request is that the board approves the Delaware County Community College Prendergast Building Project known as Resolution Number 05-20-2B to include the purchase, construction, equipping, and financing of renovating to the land and facilities to be purchased from the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. We are proposing tabling this vote till next month. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you.
Do we need a roll call table for this because it's a roll call vote?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so all those in favor of tabling agenda item 8.2, please indicate with a hand vote. So the motion to table this carries 8-0. Item 8.3 is the request to approve the election of the trustee appointments for the Delaware County Community College. And the recommended action for the board is that the board votes and reappoints Corinne A. Caldwell, Donald L. Heller, Robert W. McCullough, and Kevin B. Scott as trustees to the Delaware County Community College Board of Trustees. And again, this will be a roll call vote. So I don't need a motion, correct? I do need a motion. May I please have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you.
I have a question about this. Chuck, I think you had this question, and I don't think we got it answered. We were, the question came up in the last few weeks about kind of where these reappointees stand with regard to the motion that we just tabled. And I don't know if we were ever able to get that information. Do you know if they ever responded to us?
They did not respond.
Okay. And so is this something that has to be done this month, or does it have to be done by June 30th?
It needs to be done by June 30th.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to table.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of tabling 8.3? Okay, that motion to table 8.3 as well carries 8-0.
Okay. So just as way of background, before we move into the consent agenda, we will be bringing forth more information at the Finance Committee meeting about the two items that we just tabled in the June meeting.
Are we allowed to, at this point, just give a little public background?
No,
for
because we
people?
tabled it. It was a point of
Okay.
information of when it will be discussed.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so now we're moving into our consent agenda. Although board action is required, it is generally unnecessary to hold discussions on these items. With the consent of all board members, they are therefore grouped and approval is given in one motion. In the event a board member wants to discuss any item, the board president will move it to an appropriate place on the agenda. With that, are there any items that people would like to pull? I've already pulled 14.1.
10.3.
We're pulling 10.3. And I'm pulling item 13.1. And so with that, if we could have a motion to approve items 9 through, sorry, I got to scroll through my thing, 9 through 14.2 minus 10.3, 13.1, and 14.1. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Great. So that motion passes 8-0. All right, Mrs. Bonneberger, you wanted to pull 10.3.
Yes, last year around this time, there had been a lot of discussion about the fact that we have renewed the Whistler Pearlstein contract yet again without an RFP. I think Patty was also very vocal on that. I won't go into the details again, but nothing has changed since then, and I can't support it.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve 10.3?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All righty, so I would like to just, I don't know if anybody has any comment. I just wanted to say that what's actually changed is that we put all of our contracted services before the CAC and asked them to take a look, and the Finance Committee vetted the response from CAC, and where we landed on all of our contracted services, of which our solicitor and our auditor are two, or actually both up for approval tonight, that what the CAC said to us is somewhere in the 5 to 7 year range is a good time to maybe reconsider an RFP. In the case of Whistler Pearlstein, they approached us this year asking for a 1-year extension with no increase to their rates, and the CAC had previously told our Finance Committee that, the good and the bad of RFPs is you go out and get some updated pricing. Sometimes that causes your current person to take that opportunity to raise their rates. We're in that 5 to 7 range that the CAC recommended, and took an opportunity to keep the rates at a steady rate for 1 more year. And as we indicated at the May 7th meeting, I fully expect that the Finance Committee will take another look at this whole process, in that 6 to 7 year range. So I just wanted to give some background. And with that, unless there's other comment, I will call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion passes 7-1. Okay, and then I pulled item 13.1, indicated this to the board a little bit earlier today. So item 13.1 is a first read of policy 239, and I've watched the Finance Committee meetings, either in attendance or policy 239. I watched the policy committee meeting, sorry. And they've been discussing this policy since February. Amy might have a little bit more background, but what I'm seeing is that for whatever reason, the policy committee is having a difficult time coming to a consistent consensus on this particular policy. And because it's a four-person committee, you know, there's ties, for lack of a better word. And so what I thought I would do is bring forth, what I'd like to do is amend the motion that's here tonight to not to accept for a first read the policy committee meeting version that was presented on May, what was that date, Amy, May 14th? Yes. The version on May 14th. And the board has been provided with that version both 2 weeks ago when the policy packets were given to the entire board, and then another copy of it was given tonight. And the big change is that the big conversation that's been going back and forth about this policy, it has to do with the number of students that we might entertain having in our foreign exchange student policy in any given year, and who will make the final decision as to how many students we're going to have in any given year. So, Amy, I don't know if you want to give some background to this, about kind of where the policy's been back and forth, or, okay, great.
So the policy was introduced for the first time in February. That is because the Every Student Succeeds Act, which was authorized in 2015, the federal education law, among its different aspects was how it was addressing the students who need English language learning services. And so we have a policy dedicated specifically to that, and that policy was updated prior to February. But sometimes when you amend a policy, there are other policies that are implicated as well because they cover some of the same subject material as the primary policy. So Policy 239, foreign exchange students, is also impacted by the change in the federal education law and requires that if you do accept foreign exchange students, that they are each evaluated for their English language proficiency, and if they are so identified as needing English language learning support, that the district provides that to those students. So that was not in the policy originally, because that was a policy from some time ago. And so it was seemingly a pretty perfunctory change, is just to include that and make sure that that policy covered that stipulation from ESSA as well. So the policy was introduced in February, and the version of the policy that came forward had slightly different language than what it had originally, in that it called for a specific number of students to be limited to for foreign exchange students for the district to accept. And that had not been part of the original language. It was just a change that was made as our solicitor updated the policy draft for us. And there was some debate back and forth about what that number should be. We got some input initially from our solicitor as to the number being 3 to 5 students based on what's typical for districts as they update this policy as well. We, at the time in February, our administrative liaison, Dr. Stevenson, suggested that that number be 3 based on his experience with the high school. The committee, committee members, some committee members did not agree with the 3. So Dr. Stevenson agreed, and the committee agreed not to put the number into the policy at that point. And we held off bringing it to the full board in February so that Dr. Stevenson could provide the information that the committee wanted to justify that 3 number. That was February. So the policy came back to us in March, and at that point, Dr. Stevenson explains that he actually would recommend inserting the number 1 in terms of the number of students that would be the limit set that could be amended by the board with board action, but just as a matter of routine practice, it would be number 1, and it would be 1 student annually that the policy would be limited to, based on conversations he had with the high school principal, which is really where the exchange program would take place. So we agreed to move forward that policy with the number 1 inserted to the March business meeting for a first read. Then it came before the board in March, the full board in March. A board member pulled the policy from consent, was not comfortable with the number being 1. However, the rest of the board voted 6-1 to approve the number 1 in the policy as a matter of first read. So then it went back in April to the policy committee, ostensibly to be on its second read. And again, there was debate at the April policy committee meeting about the number. And Dr. Stevenson fortunately had the good epiphany to realize, at least based on the response by the committee and the administration at the time, that sentence was tripping us up. And maybe if we just kept the original language in the policy that didn't have that kind of specificity, that we would be able to get over the debate about what the number should be and just keep it the same and move on. So Dr. Stevenson recommended to the committee in April that we go back to the original language in the policy to avoid the debate over the number of students that could be approved, and therefore it did not come back to the full board in April because it was coming back to the committee in May with the original language reinserted. I feel like I'm telling a story. Chapter 5. So then it came to the policy committee on May 14th with that original language from the policy reinserted. And, and by the way, in April, everybody on the policy committee agreed, who was present, and including the administration, that was the way to go. Came back May 14th to the policy committee meeting, and there was disagreement among the committee, now not about the number, but about who has the delegation of responsibility to make that final designation as to how many foreign exchange students we can take in any given year. And so there was a request that because the committee could not arrive at consensus, it was my decision to insert the requested language and bring it to the full board for the full board to decide. And that's where we are tonight, with the full board deciding if that language that was placed into the April policy committee meeting, or the May policy committee meeting, should stand. And I leave it to you now, Susan, to take it from there. Hopefully that background.
Yeah, no, thank you for the history. So actually for us to discuss this, and as much as I pulled it, I need to entertain a motion and a second to discuss it. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Great. So Amy gave us a recap of what's happened, and really where we're at tonight is, my concern is that from various conversations and comments that I've heard from individual board members who are on the committee, who are not on the committee, who have attended the committee, I've watched the meetings, I just don't think I don't think that the current version that is on our agenda tonight reflects the desire of the full board. And so what I'd like to do is make an amendment that we put forth the version of the policy that was presented at the May policy committee meeting, which reflects mostly what was approved in the April meeting, the March meeting, and then reflects the compromise that Dr. Stevenson presented to the policy committee meeting in April. So I'd like to entertain, would somebody make a motion to accept my amendment?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Okay, so procedurally, we vote on the amendment first, correct?
Correct.
All right. I don't know if there's any other discussion. I mean,
Yeah, there's discussion.
Okay.
yes, Because I don't see it as the same thing that you see it as. Okay. It actually boils down to the discussion that we had was because this is the board expending funds, okay, for waiving the tuition of 1, 2, 3, however many, that the decision for that, I believe, should come back to the board. That basically was, I think, what the issue might be. Somebody else can clarify that for me if they think that was if they think it was different.
So,
but that's what the piece is, and it's because of the fact that we're the people that have the fiduciary responsibility of the money that our taxpayers pay to come in here. Now, I guess to follow that up, we do pass a motion to waive the ABC funds. to waive the tuition to the ABC funds. Is that correct?
We do, Chuck, but we don't so I hear your point.
No, that's my only point. My only point is, any time that we waive money that we're going to expend on students, I believe it should be our role as a board to approve it under the recommendation made by the superintendent. I don't care how many students there are. That's not the issue at this particular point.
So did our original language call for the waiving of the tuition specifically, or was it not in there previously?
We don't charge tuition.
I understand that. So we don't actually have a policy about the ABC House students. And we don't have a policy about the ABC House students. I could be wrong, but I believe that's the reason that they are out-of-district students, living in the town, and we don't have a policy that provides for waiving their tuition every year, which is the reason every year we have to make a motion and approve waiving their tuition. For me, what's different here is that we have a vehicle to provide in a policy the waiving of the tuition, and we're leaving it to, the only difference for me, which is kind of what I was hearing and kind of just the fundamental difference of it, is who's ultimately, making the decision about the final number that works for the district. So.
But you're seeing that. I don't see that.
I know.
I don't have a problem with that piece of it. So
But this is saying it has to come back for that approval.
That has to come back for the approval of whether there's 1, 2, 3. The number I don't have a problem with. What I have a problem with, again, is the fact it's coming back, and we're going to expend funds. That's the reason why the ABC House, why it comes back for a vote. So the superintendent, I don't believe, has the authority to waive tuition. I could be wrong.
Fair comment.
But I don't think he does.
This is why I'm getting back to, does the original 2008 language have the specificity of waiving the tuition? Or was that something that specifically got added?
None of the versions of the policy that have been presented to the policy committee or to the full board have addressed tuition one way or the other.
I think I read that.
There's a red line version that I'm reading. It says tuition payments may not be waived. The board shall accept privately sponsored exchange students on an F1 visa for attendance only in secondary schools upon payment of tuition at the established district rate. I mean,
exchange students shall not be required to pay tuition.
Correct. And to clarify, students on F1 visas are not accepted by the district. So
people are saying that it's never been done, and I know it's a bugaboo of mine. People are going to kill me up, but you have to know the history of things around here. Like we used to do things. That's what Chuck's getting at.
So wait a second. The version, all of the versions have been saying exchange students on a J1 visa shall not be required to pay tuition. It's blacklined. That's always been in the language since 2008, Chuck. So for the entire time you've been on the board.
May I add? I think this
Can't
is not what
Susan
we were
finish her
talking
sentence,
about.
though?
This is because
Julia, I'd like to finish my sentence.
My point I'm making is I don't think Chuck has an issue with what you're saying. So you can finish it, but my point is Chuck doesn't have an issue with it. It's something else.
I think if I'm understanding Chuck correctly, your issue is that you feel the board should be specifically waiving has the responsibility of specifically waiving the tuition.
We have the authority to waive the tuition. I do not think that the superintendent has the authority to waive tuition.
But my point is that language is in black in the version. You should have a red line version. If you turn the page, there's a red line version where you're able to see what was added. That language, this is my question to you, that language has always been in here since 2008. So for the last 11 years, we've had a circumstance that is exactly what you're saying you have a problem with.
Except for the fact that now it's in front of me.
Oh,
Okay?
fair comment.
So now it's in front of me, and now I can see it. And how I see us
Got it.
with the ability, and this is not anything to do with the superintendent. That has to do with our fiscal responsibility, our fiduciary responsibility of the funds that the taxpayers give us. I don't want to delegate that, and I don't think I can delegate that.
PSBA wrote the policy that says you can delegate it.
Well, then I'm not going to delegate it, and I
Okay,
would
I'm just saying
I would question that policy that they have. I'll get a legal advice on that piece because I'm sorry, but I don't see that. So if I'm the only one that thinks that we're not responsible for, well, then, why don't we have a policy that the ABC House doesn't have to come before us? How much, I mean, we're not talking about pennies here. We're talking really about a policy on exchange students that may be coming here. And so that we know where the money's going, so we can approve it, that's all. And approve it.
Yep, so I hear what you're saying. I'm just pointing out to you that the language that you're bringing forth as an issue for you has been language that's been in existence for 11 years.
I understand that, but
Okay,
that
all
has
right.
no relevance to me whatsoever. We had the language that we brought forward tonight. What, not the one that you amended, the one that we're going to bring forward tonight, where we had somewhat of an agreement upon. Okay, who disagreed?
2 out of the 4 committee members.
Two out of your
2 out of
four
the 4.
committee members,
Okay,
and I believe
fine.
a majority of the board.
Okay, well then, let's hear what other people have to
Well-
say, because I,
What do you mean a majority of the board?
we don't
So-
know.
She means if she took a straw vote outside the meeting, probably a lot of us prefer
But you
this
didn't
draft.
because you couldn't.
She
Of
can
course I
call
can.
people
I can talk to
individually.
individual board members as
So
much
you
as I
did.
want.
Okay.
No, hang on.
That's okay.
I
I'm
watched
sorry
the
I'm getting
meeting.
upset. I'm just asking.
I watched the meeting, and I've had board members contact me with their concerns, contact me, plus my own ability to vote, and it doesn't seem to me that the version that was passed at the policy committee meeting has the support of the board. So that's the reason I pulled it, is so that, we had a policy a few years ago about background checks for parents, when we first had to do volunteer background checks. And we literally had a circumstance where the policy committee was voting to do one thing, and we came to the board, and the board overrode us. They did not, the board as a whole did not support what the policy committee was bringing forth.
Right.
So those circumstances happen sometimes, and I think that this is I think this is one of those circumstances.
So I don't think we've hit the real issue that we were talking about. So here's my first question.
Sure.
So here's the version I got in my packet, and then right before we came, you gave me another version. And I appreciate that it's redlined in the back. Can you just tell me the difference between the two versions? Because
Sure.
when I looked at thoroughly.
Yep, the version that I handed you tonight, that says from the May 14th, 2019 Policy Committee meeting, is the version that was in your packet as a policy committee member for your
I
May.
get that. And what I'm saying, I mean, that was a while
No,
ago. So
I'm
I'm
gonna
just
say-
asking you, what I've looked at, that was thoroughly in my packet
Sure.
for today versus what you just handed me right before we walked in here, can you elucidate the difference?
Turn the page, you'll see red line. So I'm happy to answer you, Julia. What I started to say was, the difference is the delegation of responsibility does not go back to the board for a final vote.
So you pulled that out.
Well, I
So-
didn't pull it out. I put forth the version that was brought to you May 14th.
So I see in both versions, I see a different date. I'm looking at one says.
Well, that's a function of the
Hold on, let me
conversation
switch
that
to
that
And
occurred
that's
at.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm seeing, though, that's still in both, that I
Guys,
think,
I can hear your voices.
you might want, I don't know why this is here, but at the end of the authority, it says in both versions, the board reserves the right to limit the number of foreign exchange students admitted to schools.
Yes.
So, and I think that's what Chuck was asking for. Ultimately, we need the right to say how many. And I will remind y'all who weren't listening to the initial meeting, this was born out of the practice now, as Amy was mentioning, that we now have to evaluate all the foreign exchange students for their English language speaking abilities, which we hadn't had to before. And now we're also, I seem to recall hearing that we are having our own existing Radnor students, some showing up to school who need English language services, even though they are from here, born here. So the concern that Chuck and I had was, before we are giving away our limited precious services to foreign exchange students, can we please just assess that year? Let's see how many of our own students need these services, because these are expensive services. So that was the concern. So then it became an issue of, and less about the number. Then it became an issue of, if the board reserves the right to limit the number of foreign exchange students in a year, when would that happen? So if we're looking at the version that has just been put forward, that all organizations and students would request, have to request admission by July 1st, that would mean that, and we don't have a July meeting, it would mean in August, as a board, we would then have our ability to exercise the right to limit that number of students. And the sentiment was how unfair to a student who plans on coming to school that year and finds out in August that he or she cannot come. Versus in the older version, it was a May 1st deadline, with the understanding that by June, the board has the ability to exercise the right.
So, Julia, in the version that was at the policy committee meeting, if you look at the first paragraph of the delegation of responsibility, it says, the green says, the superintendent or designee shall further be responsible for making the final decision regarding the admission of foreign students, subject to the board's authority to limit the number of such students admitted to any district school in any particular year. So we're not abdicating.
So this is trash. This top part is trash?
Oh, if you don't like red line, I like red line, so yes.
So, I see. So they both still say the board reserves the right to limit?
Yes.
So we're keeping that in?
We both still say that, but the change is that we're not requiring it to be subject to final board approval.
Right. So how would the board reserve its right to limit the number? How would that happen? What's the
So
mechanism?
we're in a budget year where we feel like we are tight, or, we have concerns about, numbers up at the high school. We might say to our administration, how are numbers up at the high school looking? Ken, or PT, and our business manager and our human resources, how are we looking for teachers? And in April or May, I can only speak for myself, as we are going into, about to do a final board approval, looking at those numbers, we might say, hey, are we okay with the possibility of, can we entertain foreign exchange students next year? Yes, we can, no, we can't. We still have the authority to limit that. We haven't abdicated that.
Right. So what if the superintendent, and Ken would never do this, so let's imagine it's not Ken. Let's imagine the superintendent says, yes, it's not a problem, but we, who are responsible, say, actually, you know what, it is a problem. At that point, though, how do we go forward and say, you know what, this is not a good idea this year?
Well, that gets down to the whole level of the kind of governing, for me, micromanaging versus governing. So when we talk about, let me finish, when we talk about class size, and we've set forth in our policies that we're going to, or Ken makes a recommendation to us that he sets, class sizes and the number of teachers he hires at a certain date, because in his recommendation, he needs, is it August 1st, August 1st, he's set his staff. We don't go in and double check on how are all those numbers doing as he's in the midst of the summer. We've set a date.
Well,
he's
actually,
evaluated.
Present company not included, that has been extremely necessary under other superintendents. Not Ken, but that has been. And I don't consider it micromanaging. I consider it our job. So I'm just back to the original question.
Okay.
I hear your style. How on earth will we reserve the right to limit the number of foreign exchange students if we don't have a mechanism to do that?
We have a mechanism. We have a board, and we have board conversation, and any board.
But if it doesn't come up, then how do you even know? Because we didn't. Chuck, how long have you been on this board?
That was one of the issues that I did have. I did not even realize that our exchange student program basically dried up on the vine. Nothing to do with you again. I'm not okay? So, because when I was in school, I think we had 5 or maybe 6 exchange students where we actually sent our students over in exchange for another student, okay? So that's even a different program than what we're talking about here. But to get to my position, it really has very little to do with that. It's we approve the expenditure of funds. That's all I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Now, we will vote on that when we approve the budget, but it would be very disheartening for me to say, I don't want that in the budget. I would like to see that removed, because that's then a child that's been accepted into our program. That's not the right way to do it. I would, go ahead.
When I am asking for, and what I think Chuck is asking for, is just the courtesy of a status report before the very last meeting we have, to say to the board, FYI, we have X number of foreign exchange students that we're expecting next year. I mean, there's plenty that can, and the entire administration report on to us, and we're not going through and checking. But I mean, I can show you the pack I get from Michelle every week practically of information that she doesn't have to give me, but she does. And I can go through it all, not because I'm micromanaging, but because it's what it is. So I'm not sure why on this particular item some people have seemingly dug in their heels on it. I just want the ability to have a status report and have the ability to assess it as per the rights outlined here. And I will add, when we discuss this, of this happening in May, Ken, I don't want to speak for you, but I think you said not a problem.
Correct. Administratively, we're happy whether it's in the policy and the policy states that we need to bring it forward for board approval. We can do that. If the policy states that it's a status check, which is different, I think, we can do that. If the policy stays where it has been and that the administration makes a decision each year on that, we can continue in that process as well. As we're having this discussion, maybe Ed can help, clarify our solicitor. Is it legally sound in a policy, for example, this case that we're discussing, for the authority to be delegated to the superintendent to make the decision on foreign exchange students on any given year, if the policy states that the superintendent administration, that power is delegated to them? Is that allowable in the public school code?
It is, yes. And in this case, I understand what some members are saying about the expenditure of funds, but really the action of the superintendent is whether to admit certain students to the schools. It's not, the superintendent's authority is not to actually expend the funds. It's actually whether to admit the student to the schools or not. And that is permitted to be delegated to the superintendent. It's similar, but not identical to the process with certain non-resident students. When students may be moving into the district within a certain number of days, per board policy, the board has authorized the superintendent to allow certain students, I believe in Radnor, it's up to 45 days, that can be admitted to district schools, even if they haven't moved into the district yet, but they will be within 45 days. Same thing about students who move out during the school year. There's a period of time when they can remain in district schools, and that authority to allow that has been given to the superintendent or designee. So really what it comes down to in this case is the decision as to whether or not to admit a specific student to schools. Of course, with all students come costs, but the authority to the superintendent is not necessarily to expend funds, it's to admit students or not.
And I think some of the discussions we had in the policy committee meeting, this isn't a transparency issue. We have no problem with the transparency or the questions about that. I think it comes down to, as we look at policies, what also is efficient and what is the most efficient use of administrative time and board time as well. I am very comfortable with the delegation of this being with the superintendent administration, but if I'm also hearing from the board that they would like a status update each year, and board members can at any time make that request and ask. I have absolutely no problem with that, and I think that we could even say that a standing, we could set probably in curriculum yearly, just a status, whether it's in an update or it's in actual committee meeting. What is our exchange status? What are our numbers? As we heard through the committee, our numbers have been very low the last few years. But what I'm hearing from the board is they'd like an update so they see which way those trends are going. Administratively, we'd be happy to share that. That would not be a problem.
And that's what I'm asking for. I mean, and I don't understand the resistance. When you're happy to do it, it's not interfering with your authority. It's simply let the board know what we are doing. And if for whatever reason that year they choose to exercise their right to, as laid out in this policy, to limit the number, that's when you do it. That's all. and do it in a way and a date that's timely enough and considerate for any foreign exchange student who is not going to have a sudden last-minute, complete change in plans.
And I would see the status update differently than the
Subject to
the
board
language
approval.
subject to approval, just from a timing stance, because we all know the reality of board meetings. We have to have the information several weeks before the board meeting in order to make sure we get it on the
So
agenda.
the May language, the April language does not preclude an update. That's just the language before it was changed for tonight does give the superintendent the authority or designate the authority to make the decision. And then this doesn't have to be in the policy, but it could become a matter of practice that an update is provided to the board. But at least because practically speaking, for the board the way the language is written now, for the board to have the authority to make the final decision on whether or not to admit students, we don't have the data. Like, we're not the building administrators, we don't know. That's sort of why it's delegated to a building administrator, I assume, in these cases, because administrators know how many students, what the resources are of the school at any given time. So there's a specific reason why it's delegated to them, because they have that data that can make it the most informed decision. So that would be satisfied in the language Susan made the motion to go back to, but adding on to that is a practice of updating the board as requested by some board members, that after those students, the final decision has been made by the administration, the board is notified. Is that am I summarizing that based
Well,
on
I'm
what
just
you
saying
heard?
that is more in what's been the practice for the last 11 years. And by the way, let me just kind of...
No offense.
No, but...
Like you said, that hasn't happened. I've been on for 24 years.
Well, I don't think we've had any...
This is the first time that we began to discuss this policy, and then it was brought forward, so now I'm just simply discussing it.
Yeah, no, I get
Now
it.
that the lawyer has said that Ken does have the authority for the admission,
Furthermore,
selecting the
and this
child,
is really what sparked it all.
and then we have the ability to vote nay when we approve the budget, okay? So then,
Furthermore,
I can live
and
with
to your
that.
point, this has all been sparked by a brand-new law this year,
That's all.
which is to have to provide English services to everyone who comes into our district, including, and that's the concern. Just want to make sure we are servicing our existing students before we expend valuable resources on outsiders who are coming in as our guests.
Well, I would like to just suggest to you, Julia, and I think Andrew is like itching to say it, that actually having foreign students provides a really tremendous value to our current students in exposing them to a different culture. But my daughter had that opportunity.
Wait. That has nothing to do with what I just said. It's not
It
about.
actually does.
It's not about variety. It's not about culture. It's about, do we have the resources to service this child as needed to be? It's the same thing as if we were having any child who had extraordinary needs that we had to lay out and inviting them in. It has nothing to do, and it hasn't been a problem as far as I know. I don't think any of our English language foreign exchange students who have come in have required services. So it's almost like a fly in the ointment has been placed by the state because it hasn't been a problem. But please don't lose focus of what this is about. It is not about losing variety in foreign exchange. It's about making sure we have the resources to provide for these students who are coming in, because the laws have changed and we have to provide new services for them. That's all.
If I may, ESSA was passed in 2016. So, I mean, these ideas, these debates have been happening now for several years.
Well,
I just
they're
wanted to point
today,
that
though,
out.
they're now, and it's over the English language services. So I don't know if what they've been debating, whether or not they should be providing English language services or not, but that's what we're doing in 2019.
Sure. The law was written to promote local control over these issues, but there's a general mandate that districts have to comply, right? So, I think all these conversations are fair, but just a quick sidebar, I think it's a lot of time over something relatively minor.
I agree. I completely agree with you.
In the grand scheme of what we have to do, our remit not only on a monthly basis, but in our committee work. I hope that we can move on from this issue.
I do too. So with that, which is the reason I brought it forward, is that rather than having it continue to kind of go back and forth in policy, if we, simply vote on tonight, and I'm proposing, and I had a motion and a second, on my amendment.
Yeah, I'm not finished speaking.
I get that. A motion and a second on my amendment that we revert back to the May Policy Committee version, which still provides our, ability to restrict it. We've anecdotally told Mr. Batchelor, I guess we'd like a status update if we have a bunch of foreign exchange students, but without hamstringing, and bringing down the specificity of subject to board approval. And Mr. Madden wanted to say something. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, I would just have appreciated it more if someone would have approached me.
I called
as
you
the
this
vice
weekend.
chair. Okay, you called me. Nobody else called
No,
me.
I reached out to you
Okay.
because I knew I was going to pull it.
Okay, that's fine. But you're telling me that other board members talked to you about a policy. I'm the vice
Chuck,
chair
I
of
came
the
and spoke at the
policy.
policy meeting and told you how
No, no,
upset I
no.
was about it.
No.
I came and spoke during
I-
public comment.
No, I understand that,
Okay.
but before it's coming before us, like tonight, okay? All I'm saying is, I would just, if I would have been given the opportunity to explain to you where I was coming from, we may not have even had to have this conversation. That's all. And I think as we move forward, as Susan said, as we move forward, we can talk some different things out. If somebody has a difference of opinion if you watch the meeting, you really saw where I came down on it, okay? And that will help us to move forward on it. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
All right. So I have a motion and a second on my amendment. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The motion passes 7-1. Okay, great, thank you. And so it will go back to policy for a second read, and it will be on consent for a second read next month. Okay, we can move right into committee report, liaison reports. For second read. Okay, fine, and thank you, everyone. I really do think not having it back and forth in policy anymore will be good. So Delaware County Community College, a liaison report. Ms. Solomon.
I don't have any official report, but I do want to update the community that the issue of the DCC purchasing the Prendergast property has gone before a couple other school boards in the county. There is some difference of opinion among different school boards in the county. And I want you to know that the Radnor School Board is doing thorough research on, there have been questions put forward by various members of our board to the administration of the Delaware County Community College to get specific answers. We are going to have a representative from the community college attend one of our committee meetings in June to get answers to everyone on our board so that we can make the most informed decision. And I wanted to explain why we are tabling our votes on this issue.
Great, thank you. DCIU. Oh, that's Patty. She's not here. No report. Federal Relations, probably no report.
No report.
Delaware County School Board's Legislative Council. Mrs. Goldman?
The council met on Wednesday, May 8th, and in addition to debriefing on PSBA Advocacy Day, we talked about the change in leadership of the Pennsylvania Senate Education Committee. Ryan Ament, who had been slated as the new chair, took on a Senate leadership position instead as caucus secretary. But Senator Ament will remain on the Ed Committee. But the majority chair will now be Senator Wayne Langer-Holk. No one, do you know him, Chuck? You do? Okay. From the 35th Senatorial District in Cambria County. So that's a change in leadership that we were talking about for some time. We also spent much of the meeting doing our final preparations for the May 17th legislative breakfast that our council hosts at the DCIU. The topic was cyber charter funding reform. And in attendance were school board members or district administrators from each of the Delaware County's 15 school districts. And I want to thank Mr. Petiti and Mr. Madden and Mrs. Solomon and Mrs. Stern, I think, were there. So thank you very much for attending that as well. There were presentations on cyber charter funding reform by Larry Feinberg, Susan Spica of Education Voters of PA, and Dr. Mark Bertrando, who's the superintendent of the Garnet Valley School District. The council will have its last meeting of the school year on Wednesday, June 12th.
Thank you. Okay, next we have PSBA.
In the interest of keeping things short, I just thank you for approving the cyber charter funding resolutions. Those were on PSBA's to-do list. And then to remind all of my fellow board members, if you're interested in going to the PSBA delegation in the fall, those recommendations will get voted on next month. So I guess see Susan if you want to be one of the delegates.
Do you know the date? Just October, right?
October.
Okay.
I think it might be 16th to 18th, but I'm not 100% sure.
Parks and Rec. Andrew?
Sure. Just a few. Chuck, did you have any updates? Oh, sure. So we met on May 9th upstairs here. We had a lot of brief updates on a lot of different things. So rather than kind of trot through all that, I'll just kind of give you the highlights. Emlyn Tunnel may be done by in time for a spring softball season next year. Lots of good work and progress being made on that. Bo Connor, Philippone, there's lots of work being done on that, ongoing, no major updates. The Enke Park concession repairs, they're working out the insurance coverage on that. There was a presentation from a representative from the Radnor STEP program, which some of you may be familiar with. It's basically just it's a set appointment where community residents can walk together. Actually, it's every Friday at 9 a.m., Friday 9 in the morning near Vic and Dean's over on the Radnor Trail. So about 8 or 9 regulars do it. Basically, they just take a walk together every week, and it's just a good public health thing to do, good way to meet other people in the community. And then finally, there was an update on the RAC in Sulpizio. And for those who may be watching and might not know, the school district owns quite a bit of property and buildings in the township. And so the township leases Sulpizio from us. And there have been some repairs that have been the subject of ongoing discussions for several months. Michelle Deco and Mark Brooks have been the point people on those discussions in recent months. And I just want to point out that there was, I invited Ken and our administration to discuss some options for hosting some township summer programming. And in the interest of helping those efforts, Michelle and Mark went the extra mile, I think, to resolve some of those issues. And I think it's a good example of how we can work together productively with the township. So I thought I'd mention that. Thanks.
Thank you. Oh.
What I'd like to also bring forward about the RAC, the Sulpizio gym, is my own concern about the roofing that's there. And although we are the owners and we're renting it to somebody, a leaky roof is not acceptable. I'm just one person on this board. It's not acceptable to me. So as we move forward, if it was my house, for instance, I wouldn't put a new floor in with a leaky roof. Sorry, but I wouldn't do that. So we're in the process. I know the leaks are not right directly over where the new floor is being put in, but as a former roofer, you can have a leak and it can travel. You don't know where it's coming from. So I'm sure Mr. Brooks knows we're working, that I know he's working on that, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Okay. Radnor Educational Foundation, Radnor Alumni Council.
Okay, I have nothing this month.
All righty. Radnor High School Scholarship Fund. Julia?
The Scholarship Fund had their kitchen tour. It was very successful. They thanked their hosts of the houses and those who toured the kitchens. The Scholarship Fund also was proud to walk in the Memorial Day Parade in honor of those from our community who died in service to our country. Finally, the Scholarship Fund will be giving 24 scholarships this year to Radnor students.
Okay, thank you. Radnor Page.
I've confirmed with Radnor Page. We have nothing to report this month.
All righty. Radnor Committee for Special Education. Chuck?
I would just like to thank all the people that work in the special education department for doing a fantastic job. And it's not a job that is an easy job. It's a very, very time-consuming, thoughtful, and what I've heard from many parents that were, what do we call that? Target line, aim line. We're moving in the right direction, and I would just like to thank for that. So, thank you.
I want to give a shout out to the special ed department. Actually, I spoke to parents who attended the event that you had for families who receive special ed services, and they were thrilled with it. They really were thrilled. So thank you for that. It made a real difference for those families. All right, so we have new business. Mr. Batchelor, you have a little announcement?
I have,
No, go first.
Well, mine is really just that I missed the opportunity when it came through. I did want to acknowledge some of the teachers that are retiring. So Dorothy Canavan, I believe Ms. Stern acknowledged her, Marianne Wazak. And I want to give a special shout out to Jeanette Wellborn, a great Spanish teacher in our high school, will be missed, and George Hahn, a fantastic math teacher in our middle school. I can attest to that because my children had those teachers. And I need to give a special acknowledgement to Carla Scuchas because she served as the teacher representative to the curriculum committee for many years. And she donated lots of time to RTA as well as to serving on board committees and really helping Radnor be a tremendous school district. So I should have earlier acknowledged these teachers, but hopefully they'll catch the shout out to them at the end of the meeting. Thank you to them.
Good, thanks. Ken?
And just say, though we approved them this evening, we will have an opportunity in June to recognize all of our retirees as well. So then we'll invite them to attend the June board meeting. I just wanted to mention a new business, just a couple of items. One of the items I've had a chance to talk at leadership at length with, but and also in light of the discussions about the, Sulpizio and those pieces, I just wanted to share two items. First item is the township manager reached out to me and wanted to know whether we as a board would be interested in another traffic study, a traffic study around our high school area. The township is looking at that and looking at whether, especially with our change of school start time, whether or not we would want to split the cost with them of an additional traffic study. So I wanted to mention that to you as a board here. From speaking to some of the board members already, I'm thinking the timing, I'm not sure what we're going to gain from another traffic study at this point. So I'm going to engage with the township manager and talk to him about those steps as we move forward and talk about whether or not that's something that is necessary. And then I'll report back to the board. All right. The other item I wanted to mention to you is the township approached me about whether or not we'd like to talk about those lease agreements. Andrew mentioned that, Dr. Babson mentioned we have a lot of different lease agreements. So the township would be interested in having discussions with us about those different agreements, and would we be interested in having a discussion about maybe consolidating or maybe having one set of language instead of several different sets of language. So I will get back to them and let them know that we're open to a discussion, but we will proceed and work through one of our committees, most likely Facilities Committee, as we move forward with that discussion. Okay?
Great.
I just want to acknowledge the fact that Jack Lord, who was a longtime school board member, he served for 11 years, and he was one of the people who was responsible for encouraging me to run, and he helped me, and he was a model, a mentor. He was a very quiet but firm man, and his son continues as a teacher in Radnor, His grandson served on the student representative on the board, and I was down at his ceremony celebrating his life, and I would say at least 20% of the pictures, he had on a Radnor cap in his pictures. So if you would indulge me for a brief moment of silence for him, please. Okay, thank you.
Well, wasn't Jack with us at a meeting just a year ago?
Yeah.
Went
Yeah,
for
he
his
was
grandson.
here. Yes,
He was
he
just
was.
here a year
Yes,
ago.
yes, he
Yeah.
was.
I think when we were honoring Andrew for his service. Yeah, that's what I think. Okay, so thank you for that, Chuck. Moving on to board announcements, we have a Finance Committee meeting and a Facilities Committee meeting next Tuesday, June 4th. Those meetings begin at 5 p.m. in the Administration Building, the ground floor conference room. We have a Policy Committee meeting at 5 p.m. on June 11th, again in the Administration Building, ground floor conference room. We have a Curriculum Committee meeting and another special board meeting, and then on June 18th. And those meetings begin at 4:15 on Tuesday, June 18th in the Administration Building, ground floor conference room. And our next business meeting will be here in the Radnorshire Room of Radnor Township Building, Tuesday, June 25th at 7 p.m. And at this point, I'll entertain a second round of public comment on issues raised or subjects developed following our priority action items. And once again, citizens are encouraged to address the board at this time to comment on matters of concern, official action, or deliberation, which are or may be before the board. Speakers are specifically requested to avoid redundancy and to limit their comments to issues for which there was not previous opportunity to offer remarks. Is there anyone who has public comment? If so, please print your name on the sign-in sheet at the table in the back of the room. State your name and your topic, and please limit your comments to not more than 4 minutes. I know you know that. Dr. Winters, welcome.
Roberta Winters, 326 Williams Road. I wanted to commend the board for recognizing those students and teachers who have done outstanding things in recent months, and I know there probably aren't enough awards available in the world to give all those who are really deserving. I would also like to request that as the superintendent works with the township regarding the traffic study, that you look closely, I'm sure you will, at the timing for those studies, because, you know, one in August is probably not going to tell us what one in October would tell us. So I think that a traffic study is something that can or cannot be valuable, but there are many variables involved. And also, I would hope as you look at looking at leasing our properties and facilities, which I know we have done historically for quite some time, that you might also encourage the township to work in collaboration with not only the Radnor Township School District, but also our private public schools and universities who have many facilities that I think if we looked at perhaps through some kind of spreadsheet data use process, we might be able to optimize what we have in our township for the use of all of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? Do we have any email comments? Mr. Petiti, thank you.
Yes, just one. This is from Dana Karen. Are homeroom teacher/class lists a part of directory info? What is the role of the teacher with FERPA? Are they allowed to share class lists, emails, and other directory info with, for example, homeroom parents, excluding students who have opted out? These questions seem to come up often in the elementary and to some extent middle schools.
Susan, I remember that public comment was read at our policy committee meeting previously, so I just wanted to make note of that in case it's relevant, because it was relevant to what was on our agenda for policy in May. Policy 216, those were questions related to Policy 216 that didn't end up getting discussed.
Great, thank you. Okay, all right, so with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.